personal branding is only for influencers. That is absolutely not true, and I'm going to talk you through why that is. Hello and welcome to Engage and Thrive, also known as EAT, your coffee catch up with me, your host Taelon, where we will go through common problems and hurdles that come up in business, marketing and advertising and try and demystify them. I know firsthand how complicated and confusing it can seem with all the different acronyms and all the things to do in business. So let me try and help you be better in business. First things first, let's start with grabbing a coffee. Personal branding seems to have such a misconception around people thinking it means you're trying to be an influencer, you're trying to be the next YouTube personality, you're trying to be the next Mr. Beast, you're trying to be a IG influencer selling digital courses and products and stuff like that. It's got nothing to do with that. There are some crossovers, but I'm going to explain the difference between an influencer and obviously personal brand and how you could kickstart your personal brand. At the end of the day, it's not whether a personal brand exists, it's whether you're actually using it intentionally. And I say that because depending on your role that you do, you may already have a personal brand that you've been building, but unintentionally and not necessarily what you think you might be known for. For me, I suppose I have the advantage that my parents actually made up my name, and so all the way through school I found it very irritating that people couldn't pronounce my name right and it was unusual and people misspelt it. People still misspell it all the time now, but then as I got older I realised actually this is really unique, that my name's made up and that there's only one of me and I was the first one that existed on Facebook, and when I go to get usernames on new platforms I normally can get my first name as a standard username. So I suppose I had that advantage in terms of building a personal brand. I wanted that personal brand before I even realised what a personal brand was. I just wanted a way of, I suppose, owning the uniqueness of my name. Anyway, let's go into vocab. So the first one is branding. So this is the corporate or consumer facing branding that you would see for most brands. The next one is PB, which in this case is personal branding, not personal best. And this is how a person wants to communicate and be seen or is seen to show up. The next one is EB, so employer branding. And I've spoken before that I would do an episode dedicated to employer branding, but this is how a business is perceived as a place to work. Influencer, a person that has the effect and power, let's say, to impact buying choices and decisions that people make. KOL, key opinion leader. Now I was listening to a podcast the other day and I feel like this one has actually evolved into what a guy was talking about being a KPI, not the measurement metric, but actually a key person of influence. So KOL being the old one and KPI being the new one. And essentially it's someone having a voice, an opinion, in an expertise and space, so they know in that industry space for their opinion and thoughts. So naturally they become an influencer because they're always talking about that topic. So for example, people right now may be becoming really big KOLs or KPIs in AI. And the final one is reputation strategy. So this is doing things with intention, so having a strategic plan for it to influence and impact the reputation of your personal brand. You can also use it in the instance of corporate brand or of an employer brand. Number one, what is a personal brand really? So typically a personal brand is someone's name or a name that they want to be known for. So this could either be your first name or your birth name or a nickname you've given yourself or a name you've registered. And with a personal brand, it's not about chasing followers or how much content you're releasing. It's about building reputation for yourself, for your person, your human. And now having said that, for a personal brand, and obviously you're building reputation around your person, doesn't mean you can't have a team supporting that. But what I would say is it's actually more difficult to almost like hand over the keys to get people to help with your personal brand. I feel like from experience, you have more of an attachment to your personal brand, obviously because it is you, than you do your business. And even though a lot of people will say, and I say it as well, you know, my business is my baby, but actually with your personal brand, that is literally you. That is you beetroot red face showing up into a room if something has gone wrong. That is, if you have a PR disaster, the impact a knock-on effect you could have. Like, that is literally everything about you. And I think something that can be quite difficult as well is when you're trying to get people involved in helping you building a personal brand, and when they maybe relay back things about you, sometimes it can be quite offensive or quite hard not to get offended by, like, oh, do I really sound like that, or is that what I stand for? Which leads me into, it is really good to start establishing, just like you would in a corporate brand situation or employer brand situation, a little brand book about your personal brand. So what are the colors you like using, your color palettes, what are your fonts, what's your style, do you have a logo, do you have a visual identity, just everything you would want to be seen as. And this is really important because it keeps you consistent. So whether it's, you know, seeing you on social media or opening an email from you or receiving a WhatsApp in a professional context, that there's that consistency and they always know that it's coming from you because of your color palettes or because of your visual identity or because of your certain style. Number 2, who needs a personal brand? No, everyone does not need a personal brand. And obviously I said in the beginning, myth busting is that you do have a personal brand. It's whether you're actually doing something with intention. So for example, if you are a founder or a CEO of a company, it's very likely you have a personal brand going on. And whether you're jumping on that and utilizing that, that is something you need to think about strategically as a business. It is recommended as a founder, CEO, or like senior figureheads that you should be building your personal brand. Because the reality is people like to buy from people. So if you're building a personal brand and people like you and people follow you, and especially if you have opinions in certain spaces and certain topics, and they know that you're a voice of reason or a voice to follow because you're influential in that space, they're more likely to buy products and services that you're involved in, whether it's your own or whether it's recommendations that you have. I think some of the people that get forgotten about in a company is actually the leaders that are, I suppose, the behind the scenes backing of a business. For example, if you had a tech company, sometimes it's good to have your CTO as the face of the business because it's a tech company, so there'll be a lot more technical questions that people may be asking about or wanting to trust in how the tech is being built. Yes, of course, as a founder or as a CEO, you can answer those questions and why we decided to create this product or this app or whatever, but actually your CTO, so your chief technology officer, would have that leverage because that's their expertise area. The same thing in the health and well-being space. If you are involved in health and well-being, it's so important to have the face of the business being someone medical or clinically qualified, especially with algorithms like Google's YMYL, which is around your money, your life. They always want to relate it back to someone who's certified and registered. So again, if you're trying to get people to buy into your health and well-being products, whether it's supplements or whether it's a hospital or whether it's a rehab, it's good to have someone, the face of the company, who is credentialed, knows their information, and also knows that landscape to compare it and give advice and opinion about their product or service versus others. The other thing with having key people in the business having good personal brands, so the founders, the CEOs, the medical directors, the chief technology officers, is personal brands drive sales and leads, but also they drive employer branding. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing employer branding because that's a whole nother topic, but if people are seeing this as the leaders of the business and what they're like, they kind of get a vibe about what the culture is likely to be like and how they're treated and the expertise, and it all kind of loops back in. One thing to bear in mind with founders, CEOs, and people of influence having personal brands is the impact it can have to your business in a negative way. So if you think of the likes of Elon Musk, okay, he's got a very big and personal brand. I'm not going to say good, I'm going to stop myself there because it depends on your opinion, but he can actually turn people off quite quickly about his products and services. You know, a lot of people will boycott and not want to buy Teslas purely because of Elon Musk. So that's a lot of times where, as a business, and it depends on the situation and the priorities of the business, if you do have a lot of these leaders involved building personal brands, it's good to be aligned with your marketing, PR, comms team to work out the strategy around personal branding, right? And be involved in, I suppose, reviewing things, and if there's anything that is a PR disaster, you could react. Now, if you're a smaller company or a solopreneur and you don't have a PR or comms team, just be aware of it. Just be self-aware of the impact of what you're doing with your personal brand. So again, another example, Gary Vee is very vocal and swears a lot, okay? And a lot of people love him and love that he's just like straight to the point, blah, blah, blah. However, that could be a huge turn-off for people. I mean, he's obviously hugely successful, so there's a lot of people that do really like what he's doing. But again, that can impact VaynerMedia, his agencies, very quickly. So Gary Vee loves a good rant, and especially on a podcast, he could say something quite controversial that actually could impact the clients at his agency. You know, he may say something that he doesn't like or agree with, and that could directly impact the clients that one of his agencies have. Other people that are worth noting to look at how they've built personal brands, and again, whether you want to establish a personal brand with your business or if you want to establish a personal brand separate to your business. And I'm saying this because Jo Malone London is an example where Jo Malone used her name as a company name and as a business. So her intention was never to build a personal brand around Jo Malone. It was always Jo Malone London. And then she chose to sell off Jo Malone London as a brand to Estee Lauder in 1999. And so the new business she's now started is Jo Loves. Her name is still Jo Malone, and she obviously does have a personal brand reputation, but she actually built her company using her name. Whereas others like Sarah Blakely, who is the founder of Spanx, she's got an amazing personal brand and it's separate to Spanx completely. But you know, Sarah Blakely started Spanx. Spanx founder is Sarah Blakely. The same can be said for Richard Branson and Virgin Group. Again, fantastic brand reputation from Richard Branson. You almost know that everything he touches as an entrepreneur is going to turn to gold. So it doesn't matter what the space is. If Virgin go into it, you almost know, like, yeah, this is a good one. The other ones that are more, I suppose, newbies in terms of personal brand is the Kardashians. They all have personal brands, and therefore they then built reputations. So any products and services they're involved in, people want to buy into because it's the Kardashians and they get a following. And there's a fine line with the Kardashians of personal brand / influencer / celebrity. Number 3, what can you start doing to build your personal brand? So the first thing to do is run an audit on yourself. Find out where and what is out there about you. And I mean, literally start simply. Go onto Google and search your name. Make sure you're not logged into Google Chrome or anything, so it's not picking up any of your information, and just see what comes up. See what profiles exist out there for you. There may be things that you started profiles when you were 13 years old and you forgot they existed. Just shut them down. But the point is to do an audit about yourself or about your name and your reputation, and then decide, does it align with where you want to be and how you want to be positioned? And then start thinking through, where do you want to show up? Where you want to be seen? Is it that you want to be a LinkedIn top voice? Is it that you want to be guests on podcasts? Is it that you want to be speaking on stage and therefore seen as a opinion leader on stage? Whatever it is, think of those situations and then work back and pick your platforms that are going to help you achieve those spaces. And really, think about it strategically of where your audience are, where you want to be seen, and how much time you have to commit to this. So don't really pick more than like 1 or 2 platforms. And again, this really depends on your job and your situation. If you're doing it as a solopreneur, or whether you're a CTO in a business, or whether you're a founder already running lots of businesses, this could be all time dependent. Then think about what you really stand for. So what are your values and what is your voice? And I literally mean like your tone of voice. How would you sound? How do you want to be? Do you want to be using emojis? Do you want to be swearing? Do you use slang? But define that. And with your values, just remind yourself, I suppose, of what you stand for, and also how you want to interact with people and how you would react to people if comments are negative, or if people disagree with something you're saying. How would you respond to that? And at the end of the day, how do you want to be seen? But your values are really important, because don't forget that you are a human and this is also you. And like I said, this is the physical face that has to show up to places, okay? So you have to think of, for your values and what you stand for, at the end of the day, you're the physical person that has to show up to events or meet people. How are you going to feel about something that you've put out online or said, or a member of your team has said on your behalf? And the final thing is just be consistent. So if you want to start building your personal brand and you've picked maybe only even one platform, just be consistent, just show up, just be yourself, don't overthink it, just go as it is. I think one of the things that's really lovely at the moment in terms of trends with people building personal brands is building in public. So people will use that as hashtags, but actually building in public in terms of, if you're wanting to start a personal brand, you can be very open about it and say, I'm looking to raise my profile of my personal brand and this is what I'm going through, and you can document it. Or if you are someone that's actually a key person of influence in a company, the CTOs and the medical director, then have a look at what other people are doing and see what you can learn from them as their personal brands and what you could do better. But just be consistent and be yourself, because it's still your personal brand. So as a wrap up, no, personal brands are not just for influencers. And just remember, at the end of the day, it's your personal brand. So it's what you feel comfortable with. And if you don't feel comfortable with something, don't do it, because it's you that has to show up. And anything that you want to try and test, just make sure it's aligned to your values, because it's your personal brand. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Engage and Thrive with your host Taelon, and see you next week.